As the wind erodes and the water corrodes, altering everything we think we know, but we don't. It's all temporary, and it used to, but now the thought doesn't scare me or keep my feet from following one after another until I slumber. Then my mind, not my feet, wander and dream of people and places I'll never see again. I've mended as much mental anguish as I can, and now I try to use this language to take these thoughts from my head to my pen. Cause though I don't speak of my dead friends or the circumstances, often the blow never softens or yields. I'm in a desolate field, lonesome stargazing, night blazing, chasing traces of remembrance and reverence of relevant friends and acquaintances, and faceless and nameless names and faces. And while my mind is racing through these photo albums and quotations, all these people and places far from me, for only land and stars I see when I'm outside of the mile-high city, which is not my city, for I was born 1,000 miles northeast of there in the land of beer and lakes and pistol fire on MLK's birthday, where there is no minorities and segregation's mandatory. But that's a whole nother story altogether, and no matter the weather or hardships that any place brings, I'll still laugh when people shiver and say it's freezing, or say, hey, no, wait, I already had 18 mixed drinks, but I guess it's a Midwest thing, and I'm a mess from a dirty city and brought most of this filth I've gathered with me.
Welcome to another episode of Experience Andy Weins Live. Today, we're going to take a journey, do things a little bit different than normal. We're going to talk about how you can transform your pain into passion to find your purpose. It's a keynote I did years ago, and I'm bringing it back as we come upon Veterans Day this week to share my story as a veteran in a whole. Coming up after the verse.
My work labors on as lovers sleep in each other's arms, remaining calm and collect. I begin my self-reflection process of redemption. Honestly, I don't know where this road leads, or if I'm even going. Could be rowing upstream, or worse, chasing my dreams to the peak, to finally be somebody doing something with what I have, rather than saying again and again that I can't and I won't anymore from this day forward. Cause Lord knows the past is set in stone, the present is yours to mold and to use for future uses. I know I'm a nuisance, I'm told, cause I'm neither young nor old, nor giant nor gnome. I don't sleep on these streets usually, though I've made thrones of my own. I don't sit well with idle hands, though don't know what to do when I'm home all alone. I'm a menace thrown from society, and as it lies to me, I'll smile silently as others do as they please. I am watching and listening, and I'm grinning all the while, cause sometimes all you can really do is smile. So as the work labors on, I'll keep on singing my songs, and this day's never done. We just keep on spinning around that sun, and well, through all these miles and trials, all I've learned to do is smile. Is to smile.
Welcome to another episode of Experience Andy Weins Live. As always, we're going to start off our episodes with a moment of gratitude. So I want to thank all the soldiers that I served with, especially those in Iraq. Sergeant Freeman, Sergeant Service, Big Daddy Bang Bang, Helm Dizzle, the list goes on. There's a handful of soldiers that I've served with and I remain friends with over the last 15, 17 years. And for them, I want to show a debt of gratitude because the way they've transformed me as a young 21-year-old, and even to this day, has carried me forward. And there are people I can lean in on and reach out to when needed. The reason why it's important this week is, today's November 5th. We're voting for a new president today. And I firmly believe that the power of our country is our military. I've been in the military for 20 years. Coming up next week, when this will be released, it'll be my 20th year in uniform for Veterans Day. So I'm reflective over the last 20 years what it's meant to me. I've spent half of my life in the military. And so I genuinely appreciate all the men and women that I've served with through the years that have shown me what right looks like. All right, let's talk about the business at hand. Business at hand. Podcasts. I've been doing a lot of podcasts recently for other individuals. I love being on a guest on a podcast. I love being a guest on a podcast more than I love doing podcasts myself. So there are podcasts out there. For the podcast where I'm going to be a great fit, please make an introduction. If you have a podcast you want me on, make it simple. Go to andyweins.com. All my contact information's there. Email, phone number. It's very simple to get a hold of me. So I want to be on your podcast. I want to share myself with the world, my message, my knowledge, my experience. I want to share it with the world. I want to give without expectation of anything in return. And the more opportunities I get to do that through podcasting, the happier and better life I live. All right. So today we're going to be doing things a little bit different. I said at the top of the program. Today I'm going to take us back about 5 years ago when I did a keynote speech about a veteran in a hole. And I want to bring this back with Veterans Day coming up, and it was good for me to revisit this speech and where I was at that time in my life and how many of those things that I said 5+ years ago and I wrote when I was going through some of the darkest times of my life are still true to this day. So please, and thank you for indulging me as I take you on this journey together. In April of 2007, I returned home from Iraq. I had joined the Army in 2004, volunteered to go to Iraq as a truck driver, and spent a year hauling fuel throughout the Al-Anbar province, which is also known as the Triangle of Death. It's the place where Ramadi, Fallujah, Baghdad all come together. We came out of Camp TQ. We hauled fuel. The Jordanians would bring them from the border, the Jordan border, as far as us. And then we took them in the last 50 miles into some forward operating bases where there was a lot of heavy fighting. I came home in April of 2007 looking the same as I did when I left, and yet I wasn't the same. So I got back home. I spent the next 6 weeks when I was at leave, mostly at the bar, probably 41 out of 42 nights. And every time I went to the bar, there was always someone eager to buy me a drink, and I was always eager to buy around because I just spent the last year and didn't die. I had plenty of disposable income and more reasons than not to live and live it up every day. So I found my home there at the bar. And eventually I got an apartment and went back to working my job. The challenge was, in the year and a half I was gone, the job had changed, my boss had changed, and most importantly, I had changed. Within a few weeks of starting that job, getting back to the job, I was already on my way out. The apartment didn't feel right. Never liked sleeping in the bed. I slept on the couch. I slept on the floor. I slept in my car. I slept anywhere and everywhere other than the bedroom, the brand new mattress I had just bought. I never unpacked my bags from Iraq. I never felt just right. And so when my buddy said, hey, we're going to go on tour with our band, I thought, there is my ticket out. So I spent the next 7-8 months on the road with the band. And in between tours, I was basically homeless. I had the money to have a house. I never had the desire. I lived out of 2 bags in Iraq for an entire year. What's another year in the civilian world living out of bags? The challenge was when I was on the road with the band, it wasn't the same adventure that Iraq was. So I came home in April of the following year after being on the road from August to April. And I started crashing wherever I could. I started working for my old man's company. I was a carpenter, not a great carpenter, entry level at best. However, through the summer, I was good hired hand. I was good help. And prevented me from having to go find a job and grow up and be an adult at 24 years old. Eventually, I got a girlfriend, got a dog, bought a house. By August, I was set. I had this dream of a life that I thought about when I was in Iraq. 2 days before Christmas, December 23rd of 2008, I got laid off from said job. The girlfriend left shortly after the new year, and now I found myself in January of 2009 more lost than I had ever been, because the road wasn't the home, the house wasn't the home, the job wasn't the home, none of these things were home. And so I went back to the place where I last was found, which was the bar. And I'd walk into the bar every night and talk to the same bartender and talk to the same audience about how much of a victim I was from my circumstance. Here I am, 24 years old, Army combat veteran, 93 combat missions, 40,000 miles I drove, and I can't even get a job here in the civilian world driving a truck. Now, the beautiful thing about going to a bar is there's an audience every night that will eat up and listen to your bullshit. All you got to do is buy a beer, play a couple games of dice, and you're all set. You have an unlimited range of audience. And there's people coming and going, listening to the same victimhood story I told myself and others, to a point where I believed it and I lived it, and I was the victim. I was the king of the victimhood mountain. And then I went to the VA. I was having some stomach issues. I went to the VA to figure out these stomach issues I was having. And the VA did the standard thing, right? Sit down, like, how much you sleeping, how much you eating, how much you drinking water. And then there's the standard, how much do you drink, how often do you drink? It's like, oh, I'm at the bar 6 or 7 nights a week, and I have 6 to 8 drinks a night. That's about right. 3 beers, 3 games of dice. Before you know it, Tuesday night, 6 to 8 drinks, no big deal. Go over, get some French toast at the Odyssey, get in your car, go home, and we're going to do it all over again tomorrow. And so I'm there talking to gastrointestinal people, right, about my stomach. And all of a sudden, a psychiatrist and psychologist come in and ask me about my drinking. They said, hey, do you have a drinking problem? And I said, I don't have a drinking problem. I have a stomach problem. See, my guts are all jacked up. Turns out it was margarine. That's a long story. Anyhow, in that moment, though, they said, do you think you have a drinking problem? And I looked at them dead ass. I said, I don't have a drinking problem. I have a boredom problem. See, in Iraq, I had a purpose, and now I no longer have a purpose, so I go to the bar, and then I find people that will listen to my bullshit story, and that seems like a pretty good life to live. And then they explained to me the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist and a counselor and all these different things. I found out psychiatrists are the ones that give you the drugs, and that worked out well later in my life. So that was a great story to talk to the people at the bar about. Hey, I went to the VA today. They think I have a drinking problem. Joke's on them. I am awesome. I am great. Let me tell you how much of a victim I am. A couple weeks later, one of my buddies got back from Iraq. See, he had deployed with me the first time, and he went back to Iraq a second time with his brother. So I drove up to the Twin Cities, spent the weekend with him. We went to a bar, naturally. They had buy one, get one. Naturally, life's going to be good. Plus, he just got home from Iraq. All the people are buying him drinks, buying me drinks. Life is good. And we're sitting there having a drink, and we're talking about Iraq, what it was like the second time and the first time. And I said, man, I'm bored. I had the job that didn't do it. I had the girlfriend that didn't do it. I went on the tour with the band that didn't do it. I was homeless and living adventurous, and that didn't do it. I said, I'm going to go back to Iraq. That's the place that made the most sense. And I told him about some other deployments I was looking at and people I deployed with that were going back over. And he stopped and he looked at me. And he said, Weins, I went back looking for what we lost. And I was never able to find it again. And in that moment, I realized that it was time for me to be a man. See, as veterans, we come back home to this place that's as foreign as the lands we left. This civilian world is a new battlefield, full of holes we've yet to learn how to navigate. As the veteran transforms themselves, they find themselves falling into these holes. These holes are marital, financial, emotional, spiritual, physical. And when a veteran finds themselves alone in these holes, there's but little relief. As the transformation happens, coming back, you run into people that you knew before in the past. Friends, acquaintances, co-workers, looking at the veterans in the hole. Certainly, we look the same as we did when we left. Certainly, we're the same person. Not much has changed. Maybe lost a few weight, a little weight, maybe a little more tan. You're basically the same person. They offer you the beer, take you out for a cup of coffee, maybe even spot you a meal. And certainly, they always remember to thank you for your service. And occasionally, they'll ask you, how was it over there? Is it hot? What was it like? And we always tell them little stories just to appease them. And all the while, we're still there in the hole, stuck in the despair of empty coffee cups and bottles of booze, food wrappers, and thank yous for our service that we never asked for. Stuck yet in our hole. As the struggle continues, we start to call out for help. And eventually, after waiting our turn, the professionals start to show up. The doctors, the lawyers, the resume writers, the transitioning specialists hear our cries for help, and they come offering words of encouragement. They say, hey, certainly you are someone of your caliber, your awards and your accolades. You are someone that has a discipline that should not struggle. Certainly you are employable, capable, adaptable. Let's talk about what you did over there. Let's talk about what you want to do here. What are you good at? And they sell you this dream of a life that you may want to live in a land that is as foreign as the one you left. Or, after talking to them, you have no more clarity and they say it's okay. Go down the hall, take this pamphlet, talk to the doc over there, and they'll take care of you with a prescription and a pill. This will get you back on track. And once your time is up and the money is gone, those professionals are on to the next hole. There is always another hole. As veterans, we are now knee deep in the shame of pamphlets and prescriptions and pills and follow-up appointments. And yet, our position in the hole remains the same. Through it all, our family has been wanting to help. They see the changes, they hear the screams, and they are there to help the veterans in need. As they reach into the hole and try to pull us up, we continue to pull them down. Our family kicks and screams as they fight for us. Their son, their daughter, their mother, their father, their brother, their sister. Their blood, sweat, and tears, and the dirt from around the hole starts to bury us deeper and deeper in the fights and the failures and the forgiveness that we were begging for. Our families collapse from exhaustion around the hole, a constant reminder of the collateral damage of our service. We are now covered from guilt, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the dirt, the shame from our family. And yet the position in the hole remains the same. Eventually, a fellow veteran came by my hole. He looked down at me and said, "Hey, I can see you're in a hole." And before I could even respond, the fellow veteran jumped in the hole and looked at me. I looked back at him and said, "What are you doing? Now we're both stuck in this hole." And he looked at me and said, "Yes, and I've been in this hole before. I know the way out. Whether it is you and me, or we fill this entire hole with veterans and roll you out, we're getting out of this hole together." Some lessons in life can be taught. Others are lived and learned. To understand the story of the veteran in the hole, one must live it. We are soldiers, warriors, members of a team. We serve the people of the United States and live the Army values. This is our esprit de corps. And part of our warrior ethos is, I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. These lessons of leadership and servitude are ingrained the day we show up for basic training across all branches. The lessons with different words and different sayings, the fact is we are ingrained in this mindset of thinking that we are stronger than anything that comes our way. And we are. Because our greatest strength is the support we have from the men and women to our left and to our right. They are the ones that support us as we go through the struggles of life. When we get back to the civilian world, transforming back into civilians, we're told, bring the best skills we learned from the military into the civilian world. Our greatest strength was the soldier to my left and to my right. Those soldiers and service members are no longer there. The civilian world, they want us to show up to the right place, the right time, with the right uniform. And yet this uniform never fits quite like the old one. They want us to be disciplined, physically, mentally tough, trained and proficient in our warrior tasks and drills in subjects we've never studied. They want us to be experts and professionals in a language we have never spoken. They want us to complete projects with the same drive that we had when we stood ready to deploy, engage, and destroy the enemies of the United States of America in close combat. They look at us as the guardians of freedoms and the American way of life, thinking the American soldier can do no wrong, and the fact is, we are more broken than most. When I think about the Army values, I think about the value of selfless service. It's the one that comes in mind first. Selfless service, put the welfare of the nation, the Army, and your subordinates before your own. In the military, we are trained to sacrifice ourselves so that the others will prevail. And yet in the civilian world, those that are willing to sacrifice others often are the ones that prevail. I have seen this all too often. That's why this is my why. Every day is simple for me. I want to spend time with my fellow veterans, talking and thinking and doing everything other than war. My wife's work is dedicated to supporting veterans and being there through 3 phases of life. My sustainable career is about empowering fellow veterans through meaningful, transformational employment, education, and encouragement. I spent 20 years in the Army Reserves as an Army Reserve career counselor, where I mentor soldiers on what does it mean to be a citizen soldier, how to align their military obligations with their civilian opportunities and their family life. My passion project is to spend time with veterans and civilians alike, bridging the gap between these two worlds through networking, advising, and educating with a common language. I've transformed my pain into passion to define my purpose. Everyone in this audience is capable of the same. I challenge you now to join me in this journey. Close your eyes and breathe with me. Share in this moment with me. We're going to breathe in through our nostrils for 4 seconds. Hold for 4 seconds. Breathe out through our mouths for 4 seconds and hold again for 4 seconds. Sit up or stand up straight and let us do this together. In 3, 2, 1. Hold 3, 2, 1. Out 3, 2, 1. Hold 3, 2, 1. In 3, 2, 1. Hold 3, 2, 1. Out 3, 2, 1. Hold 3, 2, 1. As you continue to breathe in the same pattern, keeping your eyes closed, think about the struggles that you've been in before. Unhealthy relationships, unemployment, financial insecurity, bullying, custody issues, disease, cancer, the loss of a loved one. You've been there. You've been in a hole before. You may still be in a hole. Open your eyes. Someone here in your life is in that hole. Someone else has gotten out of that hole. When you go through this exercise in life and you look around the room, you might feel awkward or weird, uncomfortable, allowing yourself to be vulnerable and share the holes that you've been in. Thank you for taking the time on this exercise. Thank you for joining me in my hole, standing next to me and breathing with me. It really is that simple. When people come up on stage like I do here today, I give of myself. I put myself on display. And when you join me in my hole, it allows me to shine as bright as I can be. You have proved that you are capable of joining others in their hole by simply being and breathing next to your fellow man. Today, that is your charge. To join others, supporting them in their holes. People don't often ask for help, and yet they always appreciate your support. And I'm not talking about liking, commenting, or sharing their post. This isn't about changing your profile picture, sending them cards, or keeping them in your thoughts. I'm talking about being there with them. Being there when they're confronting their bully. Walking into court when they face their abuser. Sitting next to them as they attend chemotherapy appointments. Holding them as they cry over a casket. Time is the greatest non-renewable resource that we all have. Who are you sharing your time with? What are you doing? How are you impacting their life? Often we hear about the hard right over the easy wrong. I hate this notion. Why does right have to be so hard? How about the simple right over the easy wrong? Because easy come, easy go. Simple is sustainable. Let's think about the simple choices you can make to impact somebody's life. What does your why start there? What defines you? What pain do you have to share to fuel your passion and guide your purpose on this earth? Your ante for the air you breathe every day is to serve Mother Earth and your fellow man. Whose hole can you jump into today to make an impact on their life? When you're not serving your fellow man and making the world a better place, you're doing yourself a disservice. Giving without expectation of anything in return is the greatest way to reach self-actualization. You matter to somebody when you give. Growing up, and still there today, there's a sign sitting in my parents' kitchen. It's a simple sign for simple folk. It says, never neglect an opportunity for improvement. Opportunities come by every day. You can't create them. They come and they go, right? You do not get to pick the defining moments in your life. Until recently, I always looked at this sign as my personal challenge to take advantage of opportunities that may come my way to improve myself. Because I know that luck is the intersection of preparation and opportunity. I knew I'd get lucky by staying prepared and seeking my opportunity for improvement. I thought it was about me, and I was wrong. Only recently have I realized that this sign was not for me. This sign was meant for everybody else. When I look at other people's situations, I'm not going to neglect the opportunity to improve that person and their situation. It's not about me. It's about giving selflessly to others, like I learned in the Army. It's never to neglect an opportunity for improvement, not self-improvement, for improvement. How do I make this world a better place? I now view this as my obligation to improve the world all day, every day, with every ounce of energy that I have. Whether I'm saving the environment, veterans, entrepreneurs, my obligation is to serve without any expectation of anything in return. 5 years ago, I got a phone call from Kelly Freeman. It was a little bit after I got back from my last deployment to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. It was a rough deployment, and I was in a rough space. Kelly calls me. Kelly's the wife of Sergeant Freeman, my squad leader from Iraq, who I hadn't talked to in a number of years because I was going through my own shit. And after a few pleasantries, Kelly said to me, "Jeff's not doing great." Now, this wasn't the first time I heard this. I had spent time with Sergeant Freeman in the past. I had visited him once or twice. I'd been there for him and called him every couple months, and he'd been there for me. And the way that Kelly said it, I knew that this time was worse. And she went on, she told me the nightmares came back, the survivor's guilt, the suicidal thoughts crept in upon him, and he was debilitated to his bed for days at a time. Now, Sergeant Freeman could do no wrong. When we were in Iraq, we were a bunch of 21, 22-year-old kids. He was the 28, 29-year-old grown-ass man. He had it all figured out. He had a wife and the kids and the car and the house and a great job. He was the one that we all wanted to be like. Since we got back home from Iraq, he had finished up his college degree, got promoted to supervisor. He's no longer an iron worker. Now he's working in the office. He picked up a bunch of kids. He fostered a bunch of kids. He started adopting kids. And yet, he was the one struggling. And while I was dealing with my own bullshit, I took it upon myself and I called Sergeant Freeman. I called him on a Monday or Tuesday because she had called me on the weekend. Checking in. Hey, how are you, Jeff? I mentioned nothing about what Kelly said, and yet he knew damn well why I called. He knew it wasn't random happenstance. And we made arrangements for me to go down that weekend. Came down for the weekend, drove down 7 hours down to Wadesville, Indiana. And I spent the weekend with him and his kids from Friday afternoon all the way through Sunday afternoon. We spent time driving his Mustang, farting around the tractor in the fields, running around with all his kids and his foster kids and the whole crop of kids they had and dogs. And it was a wonderful weekend. We spent the whole weekend and never talked about Iraq. We talked about how much he mattered to me. We talked about how much he mattered to everybody else. We talked about how important he was in this world. And when I left him in a better place than I had found him. A few months later, he called me. And the tone in his voice was completely different than it was the first time I had called him a few months before that, before our weekend together. He said, "Hey, remember those foster kids? 4 boys, same family? We've decided to adopt all of them, and we're going to baptize them. And they all need middle names. And the youngest of the crew, Carter, got the middle name Andrew, named after me. The first of the apostles, the first follower, the one that knew how to follow, because in order to be a great leader, first you must follow. In Greek, it means courageous. To be courageous, and when you're stuck in your hole, you find opportunity to join others in theirs. I can tell you now, of all the things I've done in this world, counseling, speaking, podcasting, writing books, there's nothing greater, nothing more therapeutic or transformational than joining others in their hole today. I am no longer that victim of my circumstance. Rather, I am the victor of my story, ready to take on the battles of others and my own along the way. I am empowered knowing that my pain was not in vain. I choose to transform my pain and my suffering into the energy that manifests the knowledge I freely give to those that are struggling. I own my pain, my passion, and my purpose. And you are just as capable of me to get in the holes of your fellow man. You see people struggle. You can see it on their faces, hear it on their voices. You've been there before. No different than I can see a veteran struggling, you can see your fellow man struggling. You are capable of seeing people struggle in situations that you struggled with. This is that time in your life. There's a choice that you can make. What is the simple right you can choose? What is the pain that you have? What is the passion you share? What defines you? What is your purpose? I challenge you now. Look to your left and to your right. Look behind you and in front of you. Take this time to look around the room. Always, always, always look around the room. Your pain is without vain when it serves a purpose for your fellow man. You see the struggles. The challenge is simple. Get in the hole with them. Transform your pain into passion to define your purpose. That is your challenge. That is your charge.
Through all these miles and trials, all I've learned to do is smile. Is to smile.